space. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us at the eRetailer Home Improvement Summit. Glad you could make it. Sam Borgstadt and I are going to be walking through a couple things. My name is Jimmy Barber. I'm the Vice President of Client Management at OneStone, and I've been with the company for 2.5 years here, and excited to kind of walk you guys through some of the things that we're seeing in regards to Amazon.
Yep. Hey, everybody. I'm Sam Borgstadt, Senior Director of Client Management at OneStone. I've also been with the company about 3 years. OneStone is a multi-platform agency that exists to make e-commerce a competitive advantage and be an extension of your team.
Awesome. So kind of what we're walking through today is Amazon's pivot, adapting to the new normal. You know, what does the ecosystem look like since COVID has happened and now a year into things, really kind of digressing some of the good things that have come out of it in terms of e-commerce and in the channel and some of the challenges. And so kind of lay of the land, where we're going. We're going to do kind of a quick recap on, you know, what happened, what do the numbers say happened, and really understand this shift in this channel and the impact that it has on the channels around it. From there, we're going to jump into some of the challenges that we're seeing, and Sam's going to really walk us through a couple things in a more in-depth way. And then we're going to finish with, you know, where do we see this going from here? What do the next year, 18, 24 months look like? And so here's kind of lay of the land. We're going to start on the left and really look at U.S. e-commerce penetration, household penetration of e-commerce as a percent of total retail sales. And so you can obviously see in 2020 that jump was seismic in the sense of 15% of total sales going up to 20% of total sales happening online versus in store. And so one of the things that we always like to look at in this equation is really just that brick and mortar is still the lion's share, but e-commerce has now gotten to a point where it's large enough to, be spoken about in the boardroom and really understood from a standpoint of, do we have a team for this? Do we have resources to handle this channel? It's no longer usually just looked at under a one-person type role. The other facet that we've seen really come out of this from COVID is that e-commerce can't just be viewed as e-commerce and brick and mortar as brick and mortar. And that these channels, and I think we've known this for a long time, and it's really become into fruition as Omni has come on to play, that these channels interact way more than I think we allude that they do, and that brick and mortar decisions are made online and online decisions are made at brick and mortar. And so the next chart in the middle then really breaks down, okay, of that percentage of those orange graphs, who's winning within that? And I think some of the good call outs from that is how this list has changed. Walmart overtaking eBay within the past 18 months is the number 2 on that spot. Really seeing, Wayfair, Costco, Home Depot posting really, really strong year-over-year growth numbers. And those channels, again, Omni, really growing up the ladder as it comes to their e-commerce sales and leveraging their stores to help their online business. And that the last chart then on the right is really where I bring the iPhone analogy into play, where what happened with COVID, right? It was 5 years of progression that happened in 3 months. And so you're going from the iPhone 6, right, with a button, one camera on the back, and maybe a little bit laggy, to the iPhone 12, where no button, multiple cameras, totally different interface, totally different look, feel, and everything. And that progression happened in 3 months. And I think what we haven't really talked through is just the fact that massive progression forces some really good things to come out of this and some really tough growing pains. And that's what Sam's going to walk us through here next.
Yep, that's right, Jimmy. Absolutely. There were some growing pains, and growing pains, maybe putting it lightly. We have affectionately termed this period the supply chain train wreck of 2020. So if you are a brand, if you are a retailer, if you are a seller online, the likelihood that you have encountered one of the things on this slide in the last 12 months is pretty high. We saw massive disruptions from the factories overseas all the way to the end consumer. Purchase order disruptions, maybe non-existent purchase orders. If you're a third-party seller We had issues with carrier delays, carrier cancellations, trying to get more shipments into fulfillment centers. And then, of course, I think we all saw just massive retailer fulfillment center backlogs and stalemates as essential items were prioritized over non-essential items. And so out of this came, and if you'll flip to the next slide, Jimmy, a couple of things that we want to emphasize and take as learnings. You know, we made it through 2020. We have some scrapes and bruises, but what have we learned that we can take into the next era of e-commerce and omni-commerce that has grown so much in such little time? Two of those things, and this is where we're going to focus today: supply chain diversification and consistent presence online across platforms. So we're going to start with supply chain diversification. And we thought the best way to go through this was to use a couple of case studies from some partner brands that we have on the OneStone roster. The idea here is the brands that won in 2020, who saw massive growth from e-commerce in line with the growth that e-commerce saw, were brands that were able to get product to the end consumer in more ways than one. Now let's talk about this on a deeper level. We know that when we're operating in an e-commerce environment, staying in stock takes on a new meaning. We can't think about in-stock positioning the same way that we do with e-com as we do in store. There are much wider ramifications for going out of stock online. So let's look at this chart. So this is a brand that OneStone works with, and what we're measuring in this chart are two things: click share and conversion share online. And this is on Amazon specifically. So as we have built up a brand online, we have worked really hard to get our brand in front of the consumer for key search terms, key category search terms. We want to be at the top of the page. We want to be the most clicked ASIN or item. We want to be the most converted on ASIN or item. In the first part of this year, those orange bars all the way to about the middle of the summer, you can see we did a pretty good job of this. We were able to keep our brands relevant and in front of the consumer, and allow our brand to get product to the end consumer. Mm-hmm. Now, in the middle of the summer, that line, that blue line that peaks at 50% is the rep out of stock line. Essentially, how many products were available out of our portfolio for purchase by the consumer. That out of stock percentage jumped to 50% in the middle of the summer. What happened when we saw that jump? We lost all of the work that we had done to get a brand up into, you know, the top 1, 2, 3 spots in search, number 1 spot in conversion, number 1 spot in click share. We lost those positions to competitors because we were out of stock. You might think that's pretty self-explanatory. Of course, if you're not available or visible, who's going to buy your product? That's not necessarily the point. The point is, if you lose the spot that you've worked for, it takes time to rebuild to that position. So you can see in those blue bars, customer or other competitors overtook us in those positions. And for the rest of the year, we did not regain that positioning. Now, for this brand in particular, they way overshot their budget for sales forecasts. And so, you know, it was okay. But the point here is, if you lose the position due to out of stock, the recovery can be an arduous process. Mm-hmm. I want to kick it to Jimmy. Jimmy, I think you've had experience with something similar in this supply chain diversification realm. What has been your experience with another brand?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've worked with, particularly in the grocery space, we saw this heightened, in more so than just grocery is anytime you're working with the best seller on Amazon. And so, you know, Amazon uses bestseller rank as a way in which they kind of evaluate, you know, you can compare listing A in one category to listing B in another category versus another. And it really shows you as a metric of how do your sales rank compared to another item. And so one obviously being the best rank, you know, 1 million being the worst rank kind of thing. And so one brand in particular that we worked with had an item that ranged anywhere from sales rank number 2 to sales rank number 5 consistently all year round. And in the moment that they went out of stock on their item, their sales rank dropped from number 5 all the way down to number 10,000 within probably 24 hours. Because immediately, and it's a no-brainer when you really kind of break down the equation to a standpoint of people go to Amazon to shop, people go to Amazon to buy. And when you're going to a destination and you're searching for a term, expecting to get a result that you can purchase and then have delivered at your door in 1 to 3 days, the worst thing you could do in that equation is not have that product available to buy. And so, I even think back to an Amazon Fresh order I submitted a couple days ago, where they showed items whenever I searched for eggs that were out of stock. And you look at it and you're like, why even show me a product that I can't buy? What's the significance? Why would there be any value if I'm on a retail platform to purchase to show me a listing that I can't buy at that point in time? And so I think it really brings home the fact that, for that brand in particular, where we saw sales rank drop to 10,000, Amazon doesn't want to show it then. Therefore, they don't want to rank it whenever you search for that item. And so then as your rank falls, your sales obviously fall because nobody can find your item nor buy it. And we almost talk about this as a reverse flywheel, where what out of stock and in stock issues can do is create a reverse effect of the flywheel, where you get negative consumer feedback, you get negative results on your search rank, and then you get negative results on your sales rank. And you almost start an impending cycle where if you can't keep that item consistently in stock, that the algorithm almost penalizes you for it. And so the big thing, and Sam's going to walk us through another case study here of how other ways in which we've seen supply chain diversification become just such a pillar in this channel. And so I think those are a great example where if we had approached supply chain differently and frankly not had to go out of stock, we wouldn't have seen kind of some of the reverse effects that happen just with the nuances of the platform and how in this day and age, Amazon is rewarding supply chain operations and your efficiencies there and your successes there. It's really one of the biggest rewarding factors for your sales. I think you're still on mute, Sam.
Ooh, sorry. The most said phrase in 2020, you're on mute. We'll flip back one slide, Jimmy. I want to take just a second and round out the first case study with something that we can take back to our teams after this conference. So what are the right questions to be asking? So we know that we've seen the impacts of going out of stock. Some of us are saying, look, I couldn't even get a ship over from overseas. There was nothing we could do, and that's true. However, we think there are still some questions we should think through when we're talking through supply chain diversification. So these are: what volume can my manufacturing support currently? What shipping configurations can my warehouse execute? What accounts and relationships do I have or need to establish to reduce dependence and increase diversity? So we're talking about, and we'll talk about in the next case study, are you only a first-party purchase order fulfilled vendor? Do you have 3P capabilities? Do you have dropship capabilities? Do you have partnerships with 3PLs who can run seller fulfilled prime for you? Or do you have, shipment set up with companies like Deliverr? Do you have FBA capabilities? Do you have fulfilled by merchant capabilities? These are the questions that we want to ask, and where, if you'll go to the next slide, where we'll talk about how one of these tactics, one of these additional supply chain methods really saved the year in 2020 for a brand that we worked with. So Brand X here saw massive growth in 2020. The top blue line is their actual growth or their actual POS performance from 2020, up 130% over a much smaller forecast. Now, the gray line is interesting. This company is first party on Amazon, and they ship POs to Amazon when Amazon orders them. They also have a very robust direct fulfillment or drop ship capability set up within their company to use to supplement inventory. So one of the common use cases before 2020 was launching a product on Amazon, POs don't come through immediately, so we can load dropship inventory to get that product available for purchase to the consumer faster. As Jimmy mentioned, we can get the flywheel turning even faster if we can do that. One of the unforeseen consequences of everything that happened in 2020 is that Amazon began deprioritizing non-essential items for essential items. So if you were in the outdoor category or a lot of categories, the likelihood is you were not an essential item during peak period last year. So what this company was able to do was supplement that lost demand from the retailer with their dropship inventory and meet consumer demand, even though Amazon wasn't ordering, even though Amazon had, their fulfillment centers were at capacity. We were able to meet that consumer demand and really save the year with that. And so the gray line below that is what the sales, the POS to the consumer would have been if that DFI capability were not in place. And that's a dollar for dollar look. The important thing to call out here, and again, as Jimmy just mentioned, that reverse flywheel effect, if we had not had the direct fulfillment capability, we would have gone out of stock. If we would have gone out of stock, we would have dropped in search rank. And if that would have happened, we would have dropped in sales rank. And that gray line in reality would have been much lower. It should not be as high as it is with the other factors that come into play when you're talking about in-stock positioning online. So this direct fulfillment, this capability plays right into that question. What relationships do you have or do you need to have, or capabilities do you have or need to have in order to bring in multiple ways that you can get inventory to the consumer? That's the concept of supply chain diversity that 2020 has brought us to. The other topic that we want to emphasize is around consistent brand presence, and Jimmy is going to take us through that.
Yeah, this is one that, as Sam kind of walks through supply chain and the need for supply chain diversification, we were kind of working through the agenda on this. We really saw a consistent online presence to be the other issue that honestly has been hard pressed, given the increase in e-commerce penetration and just the amount of people shopping online, that it's been a big thing that we've seen. Is kind of these three buckets is how we broke it down, that consumers are shopping anywhere and everywhere. Options are the new normal, and clarity and trust is the new standard. And so, on the left, what we really talk about is identifying your key platforms, and identifying your key items, and making sure that that's where your investment is going. And so, what that looks like, I think a lot of the times for brands is identifying what channels where is the consumer going to be most likely to search for our product, cross-referencing that from kind of your own personal opinions and or hankerings as to, well, Home Depot store business is a big business, therefore HomeDepot.com must be a big business for us to invest in. Cross-referencing that really with the data that you have, because what we see with a lot of brands is just that you may think your brand is searched and or bought in a certain place a lot until you really dig into the sales data, and then you realize that there's very little penetration on certain retailers for your items. And so what we really coach and try to show is that identifying your key platforms, identifying your key items, there's a million things you can be doing at any point in time in e-commerce because it never turns off, right? And so identifying what your pillars are that you need to be operating off of from an assortment standpoint and from a platform assortment standpoint is usually the first place to start on having a consistent online presence for your brand. And that way, when consumers are searching, you're kind of getting the 80% of if they're going to search for my product, it's likely either going to be Amazon, Walmart, or Home Depot. And that really then is a helpful lens for you to transition into the second bucket. And this is almost a look forward into where retail is going in the sense of a target buy box is what we're looking at here. And it really brings home the aspect of anywhere and everywhere. So first thing is you can ship it to the store for free. Second things is you can pick it up using store inventory, and you can order a pickup from the store and sit in your car or walk in and pick it up. Third one there is same day delivery. Again, store inventory then being shipped same day. Or the last one being ship it to my address, again, likely using FC or distribution center inventory to then get it to your end address. And I would be surprised if this expanded even more and you had more options in how to choose, whether it's, pick it up from the locker down the street or pick it up, you name it. This is really where we see the market going, and you can't get to, you'll notice on this screenshot that two of the options are available. The top option and the third option aren't even available. And why we bring that to kind of your attention is that the key platforms, key items, is that if you're not fully invested in these platforms, they're working as a retailer to continually build and launch new things, platform day by day to help consumers adapt to this. That if you're not keeping your eye on what are your key platforms, what are your key items, next thing you know, this is the consumer experience where it's like, well, actually, I kind of needed same day delivery and it's not possible on this item. Therefore, I'm going to bounce to a different website. And so that's really how those two play together. And then the last one being clarity and trust. And this is one that we've just seen be massive, especially in the COVID era, because there's so many folks that were used to shopping in store, frankly, preferred to shop in store, didn't really want to shop online, that some way or the other were forced to make a transaction online that they normally would have done in store at some point in time. And everybody knows that those two experiences are totally different. The drill example is one that we bring up of buying a drill online and buying a drill in store is such a drastically different experience. You can't hear it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't tell how heavy it is, you can't really even tell how big it is. And so there's so many things that are just quickly identified when you're shopping in store, that clarity has to be driven in a new and unique way online. And the beauty is that the online channel can actually be leveraged in a way that the in-store channel can't. You talk about video, you talk about user-generated content, you talk about a quick review of Tommy the plumber who has this drill and I love it and it's the thing I use every day. Like there's so many things that you can curate online that you can't do in store. And what we really have been stressing through this time is that a consistent and clear picture as to what your product is, the uses that it has, can it be trusted where it's being bought from, and overall, are you giving the consumer the information that they would get if they were making an in-store purchase, even though they're making one online? And the big part that we see, and the reason we bring up the trust aspect is that if you're not selling your product online, somebody might be selling your product online. And if you're not stepping in to intervene, then they're likely the ones setting forth the information, the product details, the product specs, the legitimacy of the inventory, you name it. There's so many different pieces of the equation with marketplaces today, that what we've really been kind of, spending time focusing on is, are you building consumer trust on the channel in which you're operating? So, when we're talking about Amazon, do you have brand registry set up? Do you have Project Zero set up? Are you able to really monitor your listings to know if there's counterfeit inventory or even just incorrect information on your site? Because the quickest way to lose consumers, particularly online, is to have distrust. And I don't know if I can trust who this seller is. If this is, the title says one thing, but then when the item shows up my doorstep, it's something totally different than what the title said. The description said it came with this, but when I got it, the box didn't have that. There's so much that goes into the equation of consumer trust online, that it's the same thing if your packaging was wrong in store, is that you really start to rub the consumer the wrong way when it comes to interacting with your brand, and that has become a really big pillar of, again, a consistent online presence. Means that whenever I go, in this case, to buy a DeWalt drill, if I find it and where I find it, is it the same experience? Can I apply the same level of trust? And can I get the availability on each individual site and or place that I try to purchase your product. And that's really where we've been stressing home for brands is pick your pillars, be good at the ones in which you're operating on, and the ones in which you're operating on, build them out to be flawless, and protect your brand, and help the consumer have a fully trusted experience. Because it's something, given the variables at play, that can quickly, either spiral out of control, or just, you kind of lose control of your brand and your experience of your brand online. And so, especially when we're talking about counterfeit, and if you're struggling with counterfeit, or just an improper image of your brand online, we always talk about the head and the tail, and start at the tail, leverage the on platform resources that you have. Amazon, it's brand registry, it's Project Zero, it's transparency, some programs that really help you have control over the trademarks that you own. But then, that's the tail. We talk about the head is, how are they getting the inventory, assessing your partners and your distribution partners and your retail partners list, and saying, are these good partners? Are they trustworthy partners? And are they respecting our brand the way in which we'd want to, or want them to? And then really making a decision on, what's the long-term value of this customer, and is it more of a short-term or a long-term customer in that sense? So that's kind of when we talk about, consistent presence online, how we kind of wrap that up under an umbrella. And what we really wanted to do, just to kind of close out, is to talk about, where do we go from here? What do the next 24 months look like? And I think that last bit of a consistent presence online really comes home in educational continuity, in that Amazon's marketplace is a growing segment of their business. It continues to be a growing segment of their business, and it's the lion's share at this point of their sales. And managing a marketplace, the heightened competition that comes from that marketplace being such a growth vehicle for Amazon, both from a profit standpoint and just from a total GMV standpoint, is that education on your product, using these sites to help teach consumers about your product, is something that should be at the forethought of your mind as a whole. And so that's the first bit. The second bit then is your speed to consumer. What are your shipping speeds? What are you really looking like when the consumer comes to shop your product from an availability perspective? Are you helping to manage the total ecosystem that they have to interact with? And that is everything from purchase, the customer service that you're enabled through the platform, in particular, to be able to interact with your customer on. And then, the other side of it is the return. If you're going through FBA or you're going through Amazon, are you setting your items up? Are you evaluating your return rates as a part of your equation, and kind of the worth of your product there? And the last one we really hit on, of where, looking forward, where should brands invest, is that Amazon itself is really trying to build out brands on Amazon. In Shopify has grown massively. Amazon is highly aware of that. Amazon's had a really rocky road to build brands on their site. Some of them, it's been really successful, and then you look at others like Nike, where they removed themselves from the site altogether. And so when we look at, we always like to take Amazon's leadership principles and take their new vehicles that they've rolled out. You combine those two, and you really get an easy lens to see, okay, where's Amazon going? And the biggest thing we've seen in the past by 6 to 12 months is that Amazon is going towards brands, and brands. Amazon wants brands to feel like home when they're on Amazon. And so you look at Amazon posts, you look at their brand stores, you look at, the consumer engagement on the site, and everything about it has really been pushing people towards telling a brand story, helping people experience the brand online, and within the ecosystem of Amazon. And so I think that's, as we look at it from a lens of going forward, where should you be investing? Your brand store, Amazon posts, the advertising side of Amazon are really areas where you're trying to build a brand on the site. And Amazon's been rolling out vehicles there left over right on new things that you can do or try on your brand, even Amazon Live. It's all about building brand and building brand story online. And so that's the area where we really see, Amazon investing more and more in the next 24 months, and where you need to be leaning in for your brand.
Yeah, and we want to take you through the right questions here as well. As Jimmy has talked through, consistent presence online. When you are digesting this information and taking it back to your organization, what are the right questions that can spark a conversation to make sure that you're positioning yourself for success in the next 18 to 24 months? So the first one here is, my brand messaging consistent across platforms? Pretty straightforward, but incredibly important in driving consumer trust. Am I pulling every lever available to me to best educate the consumer on platform? And that's across all platforms. On Home Depot, are you engaging in the FAQ documents and the how-to documents and inline content, infographics? Home Depot is providing you additional resources to engage the consumer and educate them. Are you using those resources? Like Jimmy said, on Amazon, do you have a brand store set up? Do you have an Amazon Live strategy set up? How are you going to engage your followers, your consumers, as this ecosystem continues to grow and bring consumers into platforms that you don't own, but you can still tell your brand story on?
Yeah.
And the last one here, am I enhancing consumer trust in my products through detailed page management? Again, it's protection, it's defense across the growing marketplace and the growing channels that other people are selling your products in. Are you protecting your brand and what's being communicated to the consumer? Are you on the offense as well in how you beat the consumer to the questions they have? Are you negating negative reviews by using user-generated content to affect the way that you're communicating to the consumer? That's the lens that we want to think through with that. And so as we close this, we want to leave you with these two things. Amazon or e-commerce has grown exponentially in just a 3-month period. The world is different than it used to be. To set yourself up for success, are you asking yourself the right questions when it comes to supply chain diversification? And are you asking yourself the right question when it comes to your consistent brand presence across platforms? And of course, it would not be an e-commerce presentation if we did not remind you, it's always day one when you're operating in the e-commerce environment.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope this has been helpful. Drop a question in the chat if you have one, and let us know how we can help. And like Sam said, don't forget, it's always day one. Have a good one.